Happy St. Paddy's Day. Luck of the Irish today, but instead of counting our pot of gold, we're counting down the days to the trade deadline. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Habs Hockey Report right here on All Habs Hockey Magazine, part of Rocket Sports Media. We're so glad you're here with us today. We're also a proud affiliate of the Hockey Podcast Network. If that's how you found us, then welcome. I'm your host for the show. My name is Amy Johnson, and today we've got a lot of ground to cover as we very rapidly approach the NHL trade deadline on Monday. Just want to bring your attention quickly to the logo and promo code right here in the corner. We are sponsored, of course, by DraftKings as part of the Hockey Podcast Network. And if you're a new user, they've got great incentives for you right now. Just head over to the link that you can find in the description in below this video and just enter that promo code THPN for some great incentives for new users. Today at Habs Hockey Report, you got it. The trade deadline is definitely forefront in all of our minds. We saw Ben Chiarot get shipped out within the last 24 hours, so we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're also going to bring you up to speed on how the Laval Rocket were performing over the course of the last week. And then in our fan segment, in the third segment, we've got some great Show Your Habs photos to share with you. We've got our very first All Habs Mailbag to answer some of your questions this week. We always invite you to do that. And of course, we're going to read you the responses from last week's feedback forum question. So before that, we should get you started thinking about this week's feedback forum question that we want you to just drop a comment down at the bottom and answer this question for us. Which Habs, we've seen Tyler Toffoli go, we've seen Ben Chiarot go, which other Montreal Canadiens will be traded away from the organization by the end of the deadline on late Monday afternoon? Very curious to see who else you think is going to be moved prior to the trade deadline. So drop a comment down in the bottom, and we'll talk about that more in the third segment. So let's get things started with some Habs happenings. Well, of course, the big news for today, of course, is that Ben Chiarot was traded to the Florida Panthers last night on Wednesday night. This was something we kind of saw was coming. He was held out of Tuesday night's game against Arizona for precautionary purposes. Don't want to see something like a Jacob Chychrun injury happen where a guy who's a big trade chip suddenly shows up on the injury report. So Ben Chiarot was held out of that game on Tuesday night. You could see how the defense certainly suffered in that game as a result of it, but then 24 hours later, a trade call was completed. So Ben Chiarot off to the Florida Panthers. In exchange for that, Montreal received a prospect, Tyler Smilanic, and as well 2 picks. They get a first-round draft pick in 2023. They get a fourth-round draft pick for this coming draft in 2022. So it's a good return for Ben Chiarot. It's definitely, they needed to get him moved. It's been a little too quiet for my liking for Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon over the past couple of weeks. So it's good to see this first trade kind of this week get moving. As far as Smilanic, scouts that we've referred to say that he's got a lot of speed, he's got a very high compete level, but maybe the hockey IQ is not as high as some others, but still a solid prospect, could be a depth player in the NHL, and so we're looking forward to seeing how he turns out. But that first rounder in 2023 is going to be a very big boon for the Montreal Canadiens looking ahead into next summer. So Toffoli was already off the board a couple of weeks ago. Now Sherratt comes off. It will be interesting to see now as we're in crunch time. The trade deadline, of course, is on Monday, March 21st, and it's rapidly approaching. So who else will we see? Will we see guys like Arturi Lehkonen? Will we see Jeff Petrie move? There's, Yoel Armia is one that has been tossed around as far as a name. Josh Anderson has been tossed around as a name. There's a lot of potentials here. If Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon really want to be aggressive in free agency this summer, which is what guys like Elliot Friedman are saying and Pierre LeBrun are saying that they're hearing that they plan to be aggressive in free agency, then they need to free up some cap. And the way to do that, of course, is going to be moving contracts out in exchange for picks and prospects. A couple of other things to note, of course, is that Jake Allen is scheduled to come off of IR, and that means Caden Primo will be done his emergency recall. We can look for him to go back down to the Laval Rocket again soon. Matthew Perreault is the next guy to be put on waivers. It's looking more like Christian Dvorak is going to come off of injury as well. So we saw Cedric Paquette clear waivers earlier in the week. We're going to talk about that in the next segment. He is now in Laval. So now we see Matthew Perreault put on waivers. It's likely he'll probably also end up going to Laval, but we'll see how all of that shakes out. Lots to be kind of anxious and excited about as we look to see how Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon are really going to make this rebuild reset happen. This is a big first trade deadline for them with the organization. We're going to talk about this in a lot more depth on the Canadiens Connection podcast this Saturday, myself and Rick Stevens. Be sure to check that out at canadiensconnection.fm. We're going to take a deep dive on the Sherratt trade, any other trades that happen between now and Saturday, and get you all set up for that trade deadline coming on Monday. So be sure to tune in and check that out. All right, it's Rocket Booster time. This is our chance to get you caught up on how the AHL affiliate is doing down at the Laval Rocket. Not exactly the week that they were looking for last week. They ended their 3-game road trip. We talked last week about how the fact that they had this dominant win on the first game of the road trip in Rochester just absolutely blew the Americans out. Then they went to Pennsylvania for their first matchup of the season against the Lehigh Valley Phantoms and the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins. And unfortunately, they came out with a loss in both of those. Granted, those two teams are not divisional opponents, but every point counts at this stage of the season as we're coming down the stretch here. And to lose both of those games was pretty disappointing. The game against Lehigh Valley snapping a 6-game losing streak, coming out on the victorious end of that matchup, and as well. Laval really got blown out by Wilkes-Barre on Saturday night. Be sure to head over to the AHL Report. That's at the AHL Report on Twitter or ahlreport.com. We have full game recaps there as well to keep you apprised of who's scoring and how the goaltenders are doing and video highlights and so on and so forth. Be sure to check those out. Now, we've seen some roster movement this past week. Corey Schooneman, of course, was supposed to join the Laval Rocket, ended up not doing so, and was recalled to the Canadiens again, as well as Jesse Ylonen. Jesse Ylonen has been one of the big bright spots for the Laval Rocket this season. He's done very well since the last time he was sent down from the Canadiens. Laval also sent some guys back to Trois-Rivières, like Sean Saint-Amant. He went back down, of course. That's with Cedric Paquette clearing waivers, joining the Rocket. And so for his first practices this week, we see him centering the second line in between Joel Teasdale and Danik Martel. I think that could be a pretty powerful line. Danik Martel, of course, is quick. He's got some scoring touch, and Teasdale has really been kind of coming into his own in this first full season in the AHL for him. So it'll be interesting to see how Paquette really fits in. Laval has this week some much-needed practice time. They played Saturday night in Wilkes-Barre, came home, had a day off, and they don't play again until Friday night. So they have almost a week between game action, and that's something that they've not had for almost a month. Haven't had the chance to have true practices. So this is going to be valuable time for Jean-Francois Houle and his team, and they'll be looking to rebound as they host the Hartford Wolfpack on Friday night. night, and they host the Hershey Bears. Zach Fucale, maybe in net for that one on Saturday. So be sure to follow us at the AHL Report. We'll keep you apprised of how all of that goes. Just one other note, medical update. Toby Paquette-Bisson now won't be returning to the lineup until mid-April, and unfortunately, Habs prospect on the blue line, Gianni Fairbrother, out until the end of May. So that's going to mean if the Rocket do maintain a playoff position and go to the postseason, we're not looking to see Gianni Fairbrother back in the lineup until about 4 weeks into the postseason. So they're going to need to make a pretty deep run for Gianni Fairbrother to get back in the lineup this year. We certainly hope that he has a speedy recovery. All right, it's the fun part of the show. It is Habs Fan Hub time. We've got some great stuff in store for you today. Our very first All Habs Mailbag on the show is going to happen today. That's coming up in just a minute. But first, you know how it goes. We want you to show your Habs, and we've had some great submissions last week. Let's first put this up on the screen. A big thanks to Gerald showing us some adult beverages while they're enjoying the Habs game there with that hashtag Show Your Habs. We love to see that. Post that photo on Twitter or on Facebook. Use the hashtag Show Your Habs, and we will feature you here on the show. We'll also share it on Facebook and Twitter. We want to show everyone what great Habs fans there are all around the world. Thanks so much to Gerald and everyone who sent in Show Your Habs photos for this week. We really love that. Next, of course, our feedback forum question. We talked about this at the top of the show. Let's review this again. The question for this week is, we've seen Tyler Toffoli and Ben Sherratt get traded out. Which other current Montreal Canadiens players do you believe will be traded away from the organization by the time the trade deadline comes to a close late on Monday? Leave your comments down below, and we'll read your answers next week on the show. As far as last week's question, last week we asked you the questions of where do you think the Habs are going to finish at the end of the regular season? You know, they have had some wins lately, and so there's been a little bit of fluctuation as they and Arizona are battling for that basement position. And we had some great responses. Just want to read some of those to you right now. We have, let's see here. Mike Raschel says, keep up the great work, Amy. Where do I think the Habs will finish this year, even though the team is currently playing with much more passion and determination under Martin St. Louis? There's no denying that the lack of system and established talent will eventually start affecting performance again. The team is fun to watch right now, and the development of the young core is on track, but the impending deadline deals are bound to drain some roster talent. I project they will still finish last. Mike, I have to agree with you there. And as I said in the first segment, we saw that happen already on Tuesday night. Ben Sherratt hadn't been traded away yet, but he was kept out of the lineup on Tuesday, and you saw the defense. There was a hole. They definitely struggled. So as they start to trade away some of their more talented roster players, you are going to see them stumble and not maybe lose a little bit of that shine that they've had since the coaching change took place. Next up, we have Phil from Liverpool. Welcome, Phil. Glad to see that you're here with us on the show. He says, well, currently they and Arizona form the teams in the bottom of the league. And if they can keep it up and the other teams maintain their form, he hopes to see the Habs finish around 26th or higher. He says, I can dream. So thank you all very much for your responses. Love to hear from our viewers. Be sure to leave a comment down below. Answer this week's feedback forum question. We'll read your answers next week on the show for sure. But now I'm very excited to tell you that we are going to have our inaugural All Habs Mailbag here on Habs Hockey Report. So let's get to it. We've got a question here from Mike, and he says, as we head into the deadline, what is the Canadiens' biggest organizational need in the prospect pool? This is a great question. For me, I'd like to see some right-handed defensemen. I mean, you've got Josh Brook and Gianni Fairbrother both injured right now in Laval. So neither of them are developing right now because they're both injured. And okay, you've got guys, the next wave that's coming, you've got the Caden Goulies, the Matthias Norlanders, the Arbachak guys, perhaps. They're all left-handed defensemen. And so you're looking at, as far as right-handed defensemen way down in the prospect pool, you're looking at Mayu, Sobolev, Kostenko, Henriksen. They're a ways away. And, we've seen what's happened to the Montreal Canadiens when they have not had enough of a stable of prospects to pull from, or guys in the lineup that they can play them on their proper side on the back end. That has been an issue under the Marc Bergevin era for a long time. Not necessarily saying right-handed or left-handed, just that's been an issue where they've played prospects on their wrong side trying to fill holes. So I would like to see some balance in the prospect pool as far as defensemen go. Thank you for the question, Mike. It was a very, very good one. One other question. We have another Michael Spinella asking us, do you think it is urgent for the Habs to trade players like Anderson, Armia, and Petrie before the deadline? Or should they feel comfortable heading into the summer with these players still in the organization? I've been saying for a lot. This is another very good question, by the way, and kind of goes along with our feedback form question of, do you think these guys are going to still be with the team come 6:00 on Monday night? So for me, I was hoping to see Petrie moved. Petrie really heated up under those first couple of weeks after the coaching change, and there was a significant difference in Jeff Petrie's play because it had been pretty bad all season long leading up till then. I was hoping to see him move at that point. Now that it's this late in the game, I'm not, and with them moving Sherratt the way they did, I'm not sure that Petrie is going to go right now. While I don't think that it's vital for them to be moved, I think Arturi Lekkonen's probably a more likely candidate to go before the trade deadline. It's a very good question. I think they need to move at some point. If they could get them moved before the trade deadline, I think it would be helpful moving into the free agency this summer. Thank you very much to both of you for submitting your mailbag questions this week. Really love getting those. If you've got a question about hockey, about prospects, about the Habs or the Laval Rocket, just drop us a comment down below. We'll be sure to read them on a future edition of the All Habs Mailbag segment. And that's going to do it for us today on the Habs Hockey Report. It is trade deadline time. Can't wait to be back here with you again next Thursday to break down everything that has happened in the course of the trade deadline madness. We thank you so much for being here today. Make sure you subscribe. If this is your first visit, just hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell. We publish every Thursday afternoon, and so we love to have you along. We love to hear from you, and thanks so much for joining us. Once again, my name is Amy Johnson, and I'll see you back here again next week for another edition of Habs Hockey Report right here at All Habs Hockey Magazine.